I give thanks to God for the impact you are making on your home with each episode on this channel. The comments and the testimonies pouring in attest to this. And this gives me great joy that we are fulfilling our mandate. So with so much enthusiasm, I welcome you again to another episode on Marriage That Works. The ministry with the mandate to help put your marriage in the right perspective, God's perspective, by teaching and encouraging values that will help transform your marriage from that necessary evil it is right now, or it looks like right now, to what God intends for you. In this episode, I like to talk about dealing with a difficult spouse, how to deal with a difficult husband or a difficult wife. In life, when we come across difficult people, we try as much as possible to avoid them. For example, you would fire a difficult employee if you were the boss, or when you can't fire, you ask that they be transferred. When you have a difficult boss, you either resign or you seize an opportunity to be taken to another branch of the organization. You have a difficult landlord, you simply change apartments, and so on. But when it comes to, dealing with a difficult spouse, it may not be easy to avoid them or to quickly opt out of the marriage. You're mindful of so many things, like what the society would say, how it would affect family members and friends, the impact on your children. Most importantly, if you are a Christian who understands that God hates divorce, you wouldn't want to do what God hates. So for you, divorce or even separation would not be a quick option. So the question is, how do you relate or deal with a difficult spouse without being miserable? First, I need us to understand who a difficult person is. Someone is said to be difficult if he or she possesses one or a combination of the following. The first thing you observe about difficult people or a difficult person is negativity. A difficult person is negative, always nagging, always complaining, always unhappy, always depressed or feeling depressed, judgmental, hard to please, pessimistic, distrustful, critical, always looking out for the wrong thing in the other person or in what the other person does. So a difficult person is authoritative, bossy, always wanting to be in control, feels right always and never wanting to be corrected, never listening to advice, always wanting to have ease or a way. 3, a difficult person is insecure, always comparing themselves with another, always competing, always wanting to show that they are better than others. 4, difficult persons are abusers. They always take every opportunity to abuse, physically, emotionally, verbally, and or in every way they can inflict pain on the other person. Such persons cannot tame their anger. Also, a difficult person is self-centered. A difficult person is selfish, always looking out for their own interest and not the interest of others. If your husband or wife is any or a combination of the above mentioned, then he or she is a difficult person. Maybe you have tried talking to them or even tried changing them and are always met with more difficulty. I like to share with you few tips on how to live with such spouse without being miserable or losing your own positive energy. The first step to take in dealing with a difficult spouse is to be sure that you are not a difficult person yourself. The first thing to do when you realize or perceive that your spouse is a difficult person is to have a very objective evaluation of yourself. You may need to move back a bit in this video in order to go through the traits of a difficult person that I earlier mentioned to really evaluate yourself. If you as much as possess even one of those characteristics, then you are a difficult person yourself. So if you find one or more of those negative traits in you, be honest with yourself enough to immediately start working on yourself to get rid of them. When you start working on yourself, it may even surprise you to discover that your spouse is not as difficult as you had thought they were. First, remove the log of wood in your own eye before trying to remove the speck in your spouse's eye. Number two, you need to realize that you cannot change your spouse. You can only change your reactions and or your responses. You have tried long enough to change him or her by suggesting, advising, encouraging, begging, crying, shouting, and whatever it is that you knew how to do and have done, but have not seen any positive change. Rather, you have been met with more frustrations. So stop trying to change him. Stop trying to change her. You cannot succeed. Instead, change your responses and reactions towards your difficult spouse. Number three, stop feeling responsible for your spouse's negative or difficult nature. That's what made you think over the years that you should be able to fix their problems, and your inability to fix them has left you perpetually overwhelmed. You have taken on their stress and worries as yours long enough. You have thought that by taking on your spouse's baggage as your own, you were helping him or her, but you are not. So stop it. The only way you can help them is by keeping your spirit high and inviting them up to where you are. That may sound quite hard, but it's the truth. Ever heard the saying, do not repay evil with evil, but overcome evil with good? So also it is with emotions. Don't react to your spouse's negative emotions with a corresponding negative emotion. For example, your husband feels depressed and you allow yourself to get beaten down too because you feel that's the only way to connect with him. When you do that, you have just compromised your own energy and you are less able to help him out of that unwholesome situation. Number five, investigate. Find out what the problem is. Sometimes a person who is perceived to be difficult may just be a victim of a past event or a combination of some past events and may even be crying for help deep inside them. The misbehavior of your spouse may just be as a result of a distorted value system. For example, a man who saw his father beat up his mother severally while growing up may just assume that it is a normal thing to do. Therefore, find out what the problem is, and if it is something he or she needs to seek help on, encourage them to do so. Number six, commit to loving your difficult spouse patiently and unconditionally. When you do, Your attitude towards your spouse will gradually change for the better. And then, with time, he or she can also begin to have a positive outlook to life. I have carefully picked those two adjectives, patiently and unconditionally, to show you how to love your spouse, because I know the change you expect may not come quickly. So you don't stop loving after a week or a month or even a year and say, he's not responding or she will never change. Therefore, put on long suffering as a virtue, because it just might take longer than envisaged, maybe several months or even years. Now you may be asking, what if after putting in my best efforts for years, my negative spouse refuses to change? Well, I haven't promised you either that they will change. The only assurance I have for you is that the God that instituted marriage loves both of you, all your inadequacies notwithstanding. So, if after putting in all the efforts and the difficult partner refuses to change, this is what you should do. Go ahead and make yourself happy always. Be determined that your joy, your peace of mind, and your mental health will not be affected by or dependent on whether or not the other person changes or behaves well. Also, you need to go ahead and do the best you can to make your marriage work. Pray continuously for your difficult or negative spouse and trust God to fix all that needs to be fixed. One thing is sure, if you truly commit to loving your spouse unconditionally and he or she refuses to change, at least you can enjoy God's peace within you, and you can receive grace to raise children who will have a positive outlook towards life instead of taking after their negative parents. I'd like to suggest a last thing to do in dealing with a difficult spouse. Please listen to me very carefully. This should never be your first option. I repeat, never consider this last option as your first solution when you realize that your spouse is a difficult person to deal with. This last option can only be justifiable when, one, you have made sure that you are not in any way contributing to the problem by being a difficult person yourself. Two, you have done every other thing I earlier suggested and there is no positive change. And lastly, when you are at risk, that is, your life is in danger if you continue to stay with that difficult spouse, then you can leave. For example, if your husband beats you all the time, no matter how submissive you are, please leave before he kills you. If after you have truly put in your best into helping your difficult partner to change and he or she refuses to, rather you in turn feel pulled down by his attitude or her attitude, no matter how hard you try not to, please seek help and you will find. You can reach out to me through either my phone number or my email. I'll see you again soon. But till then, peace be upon your home.